The woman finished showering and opened the bathroom door. A strange man standing outside. She was unable to see with her eyes and had to use her hands to retrieve the towel. Outside, she quietly watched Eros the woman wrap the towel from the bathroom. Although blind, she knows her way around the house very well. The man did not want to reveal himself so early and secretly observing from the sidelines. Sarah walked to the kitchen as usual, unaware that her husband was lying in a pool of blood. The blood was flowing towards her feet. Almost touching Sarah, she put down her things and went back to her husband's side. This time, she stepped on the blood as she picked up the plate and left, and Sarah fell to the ground in confusion, panicked. She turned around and felt around on the floor, and a sticky liquid passed through her palm. She screamed out when she touched the man's face, the one she knew best in the world. She didn't have time to think about it and quickly got up to leave the place. Just outside the kitchen, a man grabbed Sarah, and after the collision, Sarah was scared and backed up. When asked what the other party wanted to do, the man walked calmly to a display rack, shaking a glass of water to make a noise to tease her. Seeing Sarah's panicked expression, he was inspired to play with her. Frightened, Sarah drops her book on the floor and rushes to the bedroom, closing the door and locking the man out, followed by quickly locking the other door, fumbling under the sheets for a computer and turning on voice wake-up mode. The man was still shouting at the door. Sarah opened the mailbox, ready to call the police, shouting, "Right mailbox, please call the police." The man rushed in through the window and knocked Sarah to the ground. Her hands are tied to the bed rail. The man approached Sarah with a bottle of wine and was surprisingly kind enough to untie a buckle from her hand. He gently wiped the blood off Sarah's leg, but Sarah knew the man was no good and cursed the other man loudly. The man grabs her by the hair and Sarah immediately calms down and apologizes to him, promising the man that she would do everything he said. The man took out a knife and untied Sarah. The first step of the plan was successful. While the man went out to make a phone call and went into the dressing room, put on some clothes, change into sneakers, grab the camera on the floor, and hide it behind him in a secret place. When the man approached, she hit him with force, causing him to fall to the ground. Sarah quickly left the room, too late to take the elevator, and had to descend the stairwell. At that moment, the man rose from the ground. Sarah inhaled deeply and quickly left. The man followed her 3 flights of stairs away. By this point, Sarah had already made her way to the first floor of the warehouse. Stumbling along the pipe and quickly advancing, she hid in a corner and dared not make any noise. Suddenly, a familiar noise came from the warehouse and the apartment security guard noticed the noise inside. He picked up a shovel and followed the sound. Sarah hears voices and asks for help. The guard is getting closer to her. At that moment, the man suddenly appeared and held Blackie in his arms, then brutally killed him. Sarah realized her hopes were dashed and quickly left. Shouting out loud as she followed the barbed wire fence, she stumbled outside the apartment building. The man moved quickly, but Sarah has already reached to pass her by. A man claiming to be a police officer appeared just as she was calling for help. The man saw them and had to retreat. The policeman wrapped his jacket around her, calming her mind. The bald man took out his cell phone in front of Sarah and called his colleagues for backup. The two of them went to the lobby of the apartment and waited for the police to arrive. Baldy presses the elevator button at that moment, and the man arrives from the front door as the elevator door opens. The man ties Sarah to the elevator and Baldy pretends to be a police officer, allowing Sarah to escape. They returned to the apartment and covered the body of the husband. They then gently ask Sarah about the whereabouts of the diamonds, but she refuses to answer. The man dragged Sarah from the couch to the floor and threatened her with violence. At that moment, the bald head appeared to have found something to look forward to. He asked the man to remove the painting from the floor, and then used a knife to cut the back of the painting. Indeed, a substantial amount of money was found inside. The two men packaged the dollars and then turned around and left. After hearing a door slam, Sarah quickly got up and locked the door, but she couldn't see the bald figure in the mirror, and she thought the house was secure. Sitting on the floor and touching the necklace her husband gave her. When it was dark, she seemed to realize something and quickly ran towards the door of the room. Just as she opened the door, a man slammed it shut. She was so scared that she backed up, but then she ran into the arms of another man. Sarah escaped from the man and ran to the balcony. A bald guy was approaching. At that moment, a patrol plane flew overhead. Sarah ran to the roof of the building in the direction of the plane to call for help, but the bald guy with a gun disguised as a couple, hugged her and kissed her. Then she was forced to wave her arms at the plane. The captain thought it was a couple's orgy and turned around and left. The two men tied Sarah's arms, wrapped tape around her body several times, and tied her to a table, hold her upper body down and cover her face with a towel, bringing a large glass of water to force her to reveal the location of the diamonds. She struggles instinctively in the drowning water, with a disdainful tone of voice. She asserts her will and struggles desperately to get away. At that moment, there was a bell at the door and the two stopped to look outside. Sarah heard her sister's voice and regained her hope. The bald man with a gun forced her to find a reason to trick him, otherwise both her life and her sister's would be lost. The two stood on either side of the door and Sarah opened it to reveal a gap. The sister sees her messy hair and is puzzled. She explained that her and her husband's disagreement is not convenient for receiving them. My brother-in-law believed that the man who hit Sarah wanted to come in to discuss. A bald head is ready to shoot with a gun. My pregnant sister's water broke and she needs to go to the hospital now. When the two men left, Sarah cried and closed the door. She had to stall as long as possible. If they got the diamonds, they would definitely kill them. She lied to the bald man about the location of the diamonds and the flower pots on the balcony. He had to smash hundreds of flower pots one by one to see them. At that moment, the man in the kitchen accidentally stumbled upon the frozen diamond in the ice. He looked at the balcony with a bald head and became self-centered, placing the ice under the faucet to flush. Then he took out all the ice and put it underwater, waiting eagerly for the diamonds to appear. Soon, dozens of crystal and diamonds melted and then were packed in a transparent bag. The bald man outside the door noticed him sneaking around and hid the diamonds on his body. Then came out two individuals who were arguing suddenly pulled out a pistol and started shooting each other people. Sarah was stunned as the bald man pulled out a diamond behind him. Baldy picked up the bag and happily laughed. Suddenly, Sarah appeared to attack his back. The gun and diamonds fell to the ground. Sarah was also pushed down by him. She quickly stood up and ran forward. The lamp fell to the ground, causing a short circuit in the wire. The house was dark, but it became Sarah's home turf. Baldy found Sarah in the dark and almost got shot by a pistol. Sarah had diamonds, a gun, and would sound the alarm as soon as he made a faint noise. The fireworks explosion became an obstacle for her to distinguish the sound. The bald head took the chance to approach, but was still hit by Sarah's shoulder. She took the diamonds one by one and threw them out, causing the bald head to not be reached. He became increasingly anxious as several diamonds were about to vanish and headed in that direction. Sarah suddenly burst out with incredible strength and flipped him over behind him, and Baldy fell down on the 15th floor. Sarah can finally relax after a day of fighting, but then came the grief of her husband's death. She soaked dozens of remaining diamonds in water and placed them in. She would have to rely on these ice cubes for the rest of her life.